Our next guest is coming off his most impressive win in his MMA career when he TK'd former champion Johnny Hendricks in the first round. He now returns to the program ahead of headlining UFC Fight Night 89 against Rory MacDonald. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Thanks, my friend. Glad to be on with you guys again.
Yeah, it's always good when you come on. Now, how about this? You're headlining your third show in a row. For those that don't know, obviously you were the main event for Tough ATT versus Black Zillions, and obviously your last fight with Hendricks at UFC Fight Night 82, and now this. That's a pretty big feather in the old cap. Tell us, how's that feel?
Man, it feels great. I'm just excited that the UFC and the fans, are knowing that I can, pull off an exciting show and headlining these things. It definitely gives me two thumbs up and makes me feel great, man, to be honest with you. Just going out there and just trying to put on a show for the fans and for the UFC, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, well, they say headlining a show in the main event brings a lot of pressure, but you headlining fights have seen you finish your opponents in the first round. Does it have sort of like a reverse effect on you where you see it as an opportunity to show off what you can do?
Oh, definitely. Being the main event, it does put a little bit more pressure on you. But, that added pressure definitely brings the best out of me. So whenever I step out there and know I'm in the main event, people are expected to see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson put on a show and, see something flashy. And that's just my style. So that added pressure, it definitely brings the best out of me. And for some reason, man, I prepare myself for a five-minute round war. Just let the knockout happen. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The past two fights, it just ended up happening.
Yeah, much to the happiness of everybody watching. Now, before we get into the fight and the state of the welterweight division and a bunch of things, we want to talk about Stephen Thompson, the man. We noticed on Instagram you're wearing Dragon Ball Z Rashis at training, and we were a little surprised that you were actually wearing a Piccolo Rashi rather than, the more popular and fitting Goku one. Explain this key, crucial decision.
Well, everybody wants to be the main character, and it's just kind of, everybody expects everybody somebody wearing the Goku. But sometimes I don't like the main guy. I like the underdog, the guy who maybe not as powerful, but has got a great character. Piccolo's one of my favorites, man, to be honest with you. He's been there since the regular Dragon Ball episodes and Dragon Ball Z. So, yeah, man, I like Piccolo. I like Trunks. Obviously, Vegeta's got an awesome character. But, yeah, man, that's just I like to go for that. And just the fact that Piccolo's probably out of the bunch, he's a strategist. You know what I mean? He's a thinker. So he thinks before he steps out there and duels anybody. And I like that about Piccolo.
Well, Stephen, since we're on the topic of Dragon Ball Z, we're going to read out a number of UFC fighters' names, and we want you to compare them to a Dragon Ball Z character, okay? So we'll read out a bunch of names, and you know what? If there's a couple of characters that stand out to you, that's okay too, okay? So we'll kick it off with Robbie Lawler. Who does he remind you of from Dragon Ball Z?
Robbie Lawler, he reminds me of Brawley. I mean, big shoulders, big arms, kind of stands there and takes punishment. If you're familiar with Brawley, he takes punches, man, because he's just that powerful, Definitely Brawley for him.
All right, what about Tyron Woodley? Who does he remind you of?
Tyron Woodley, kind of a shorter fighter. I would say Oob.
Okay, yeah.
With Dragon Ball GT, he's the reincarnation of Majin Buu. You know what I mean? And that's who he reminds me of, man, Oob.
What about the man of the hour at the moment? Everybody's talking about him, Conor McGregor. Who does he remind you of?
Oh, that's a hard one, man. Conor McGregor, he doesn't look like too much, but I would say Vegeta.
Okay.
Definitely Vegeta, man.
He's
when he goes out there to fight, he uses a lot of emotion and tries to get his opponents to get emotional, and that's how he beats them. And he's just a tough guy. You know what I mean? When I see him, I see Vegeta.
I was actually out the other night at a place in Melbourne, and there was a guy with a Margin tattoo on the back of his neck. So how about that? Finally...
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Rory MacDonald. Who does he remind you of in the Dragon Ball Z saga or universe?
Oh, man. Rory MacDonald, he is definitely... those guys from TriStar are strategists, and they are thinkers. They're not just going out there just winging things, just expecting to throw a punch. They're thinkers. So really... I would see him as Piccolo, to be honest with you. He is definitely a strategist, uses his jab. he never looks like he's overwhelmed. He's always keeping his cool, and that's the way Piccolo goes out there and fights. He's always keeping his cool.
Well, that's interesting. Now, let's talk about your fight. When we spoke last time, you wanted the next title shot. However, you ended up getting matched up with your friend Rory MacDonald instead, and Tyron Woodley ended up getting the shot. Just want to know, Stephen, what was your reaction to getting Rory as your next opponent as opposed to getting the next title shot?
You know, I was a little disappointed that I didn't get the title shot, just because, you know, I finished the former welterweight champion and a guy that went 5 rounds with Georges St. Pierre, which was controversial, 10 rounds with the champion now. And even though Robbie won the last one, it was still controversial. So I see it as me beating the welterweight champion. And the fact that Rory just fought him for the title in July. So they're it's almost like they're giving him a second shot, you know, at the title. But yeah, man, sometimes that happens. You got obstacles that are going to get in your way, and you got to just mow through it. He is the number 1. I'm the number 2. So I want to be that number 1 spot. I want that. And it's a dangerous guy to do that, you know. I was wanting the title shot, but he is definitely a dangerous guy to be stepping in the octagon with, which is why he's the number 1 contender. But, you know, we're buds, and we're going to be friends before and after the fight.
We'll talk about your friendship in a moment, but just once that fight was set, you and Rory MacDonald, it was a big question of who's going to get the next title shot. And there were some who thought that maybe Nate Diaz should have gotten it, you know, just against Lawler to capitalize on his popularity. And then in comes Tyron Woodley. Do you think that Woodley is the right man for that title shot? Do you think he deserves that next title shot?
I definitely think he is at the level to be fighting for the title shot. Yes. Well, I mean, the UFC, to be honest with you, yeah, the UFC did tell Tyron he would get the next shot. And I guess for anybody has been told that, hey, UFC promised me the next shot. They're going to wait until he fights for the title. So yeah, man, I think it's cool that Tyron's going out there, going to be fighting for it. We'll see what happens. And, I don't like to look past anybody. So hopefully after this fight, we'll be fighting whoever wins that fight, hopefully in November in Madison Square Garden.
I guess the interesting thing in the whole situation is Woodley's last win was over Kevin Gastelum way back in January of 2015. The fight that was supposed to give him a title shot was against Johnny Hendricks. That fight obviously didn't happen, but you did fight Johnny and destroyed him in the first round. So in a lot of ways, does it sort of blur your mind a little bit that he's fighting for the belt and you're sort of fighting Rory MacDonald instead?
Yeah, man. I mean, to be honest with you, yes. It's kind of upsetting that it's happening this way, but you know, I'm a fighter. That's what I do, and I'm here to fight the best. And like I said before, I'm the number 2, and he's the number 1. So I guess I gotta show the UFC one more time that I deserve that title shot. So, you know, it's going to be happening June 18th, and whatever happens there, and whatever happens during the Tyron and Robbie Lawler fight, you know, it is what it is, brother. I'll be ready for whoever I'm stepping in the octagon with, but a little disappointed at the same time.
I feel like that's a very Piccolo thing to say, you know, no complaining, just kind of dealing with you know, what's in front of you. I mean, now that you're fighting, obviously, Rory MacDonald, a former training partner, a guy that you know pretty well, is it difficult for you to prepare for that fight, you know, having that friendship there?
You know, at first, I was kind of disappointed that I was fighting him because we do have, you know, we got a relationship. We've known each other for years. The days before I was even fighting MMA, I was going up training at TriStar with Georges St. Pierre, and I was, you know, specifically up there for him. But me and Rory would be in the same classes together, so we could drill with each other. Never really sparred, but we developed a relationship. So whenever we see each other at the fights, when I would go back to TriStar, we would hang out. You know, we would talk and chit chat. But you know, when you get up to the level we are now, it's bound to happen. You know, you're going to be fighting that guy that you've trained with. You know, you saw this past weekend, I believe, you know, Overeem trained with Orlovsky, but they went out there and they duked it out, man. And that's what's going to happen. We know it's business, and we're just going to be friends that are going to be punching each other in the face June 18th.
Well, I guess it happens in the gym all the time. With Arlovsky and Overeem, you could tell that both guys didn't really like each other that much. Yeah. But I think this is a little bit different. And I guess the other thing that comes into play is you're an unpredictable guy and your movements are hard to get used to. Do you think it's a negative fighting a former training partner in the sense that he knows a lot of what you're capable of more than your previous opponents?
You know, not at all. I mean, at the time when I was up there, I was specifically up there for George, but I was just a
Okay.
kickboxer at the time.
Uh-huh.
And actually going up there training with those guys were the ones that kind of inspired me to actually switch over from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. So I found myself training, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, just to be a better sparring partner for George. And once I made that jump over, I kind of stopped going up there because I had to train specifically here with my coaches. So I haven't been up there in probably 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow.
But having that relationship and them knowing how I fight, I've made, and they know this, I've made leaps and bounds from when I was up there the first time, from, up there training with those guys. But I know they're going to be really ready. They can just go at film and just pick it apart. I know how Faraz is. He's a thinker, man. He's definitely a brain, and can break fighters down. So I know they're back watching film, watching my last three, 4 fights. But it is very difficult for them to find sparring partners. But at the same time, they know what they're doing. I think they brought in Michael Page Venom, who fights for Bellator, who's a karate stylist. A few guys from Austria, I believe, are karate guys. But it's okay, man. We all have different. We're all different. So it's still going to be difficult for them to really, get ready for me.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Michael Venom Page is obviously making big waves in Bellator. How do you think he's going to go as far as emulating your style? And what do you think your biggest advantages will be over Rory and, things that you'll obviously surprise him with?
He's going to try and simulate the best way he can. He doesn't throw a lot of kicks. If you ever watch him fight, he's really good with a pulling right hand. He's very fast with explosive with his hands, but they're one-shot techniques. So it's going to be hard for him to break that style to kind of simulate me. I throw a lot more kicks than he does and different angles than he does. So, it's just kind of that's what makes this sport exciting. I don't know what Rory's going to come with. I know he's got a good jab. He keeps his left side forward, likes to throw the back leg roundhouse. So just about anybody else that I prepare for, I look for him to shoot for my legs, to get me to the ground, just like everybody else. So I got to prepare myself for that.
Well, McDonald's last fight was a brutal one with Lawler that legitimately made him look like Voldemort from the Harry Potter movies near the end of it. But in all seriousness, he took a lot of damage to his head. How much of an effect do you think that had on him? And what do you think about some fans saying he may never be the same fighter again after that outing?
That's just something we'll have to see. I remember after my loss, and I took a beating fighting Matt Brown. I grew tremendously after that. And I am preparing for the same Rory MacDonald. The Rory MacDonald who lost is going to come back 10 times better. And that's how I have to look at it. If I look at it as if he may not come back the same, I'm not going to train as hard as I can. I feel that I may not prepare myself like I should. So at right now, I don't like to think about as if, he may not be the same fighter. I don't know. Especially his nose. Is his nose going to be the same if he gets kicked or punched in it? I don't know. But what I do know is that Rory MacDonald is a great fighter. And I know from my experiences, after losing a fight, I came back stronger. And I feel that Rory's going to do the same.
Do you think you'll target the nose? Is that going to be something on your radar?
Oh, you know what? Yep. It's either the nose or the jaw. And there's a real sweet spot that I like to aim for as well, which is directly on the ear. I don't know if you've seen some MMA fights where guys get grazed on the ear. For example, Conor McGregor and Poirier. Dustin Poirier. I mean, he's got grazed right on that ear, that sweet spot. So, yes, I'm trying to be very specific with my punches. The nose is definitely a big target.
We know that you were a lot more vocal after your last fight, but, if you do beat Rory MacDonald, are you planning to call out the winner of Lawler Woodley just to make sure you don't miss out on another title shot to Carlos Condit or, say, Nick Diaz, who are, other guys who are waiting in the wings?
Definitely. I mean, after, I just beat the number 2 guy, former welterweight champion. When I beat the number 1 guy, they have to give it to me. I'm definitely going to go out there, put my foot down and say, listen, guys, I deserve the title shot. Give it to me.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, speaking of Carlos and Nick, does it legitimately worry you that even though you may win, there's a good chance Nick Diaz might get the title shot and return to the UFC because of the money he draws and because he previously beat Lawler in brutal fashion?
You know what? It is a possibility. I mean, which is, makes the UFC exciting because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's up Dana White's sleeve and what he's going to do next. But I'm looking at all possibilities. it could happen, man. So you just got to be prepared for it, pretty much. I mean, when you fight for the UFC, it's just like, you know, it's just really waiting. They give you a name, that's what you got to be ready for.
So I'm just curious because, I mean, you're a really nice guy and you're super positive, but if it did turn out that you had to fight another time after beating Rory MacDonald, who's the #1 contender, and already beating Johnny Hendricks, or even twice more, would that bother you? How much would that bother you?
Definitely, man. That would be really disappointing. I mean, if they don't give me the title shot, something's wrong. That's just not right, I believe. I'll definitely be making some noise, or try to at least. I'm not really, you know, people really don't take me serious because I am a nice guy. But, something's got to be wrong if they don't give it to me after this.
I mean, I guess another way around Diaz getting a title shot over you, and again, everybody's been talking about you getting that title shot for a long time, but then again, we saw what happened with Miesha Tate. If, for whatever reason, you don't, another way of sort of, stopping Nick Diaz from getting that title shot is if you're the guy who versus him. A lot of people want to see that rematch with him and Condit, but, the fight's already happened. Would you like to test yourself against Diaz? And if it did happen, how would you see that fight playing out?
Oh, definitely, man. Diaz is he's a monster, man. He's not the most explosive guy out there, but he's crafty everywhere. He's got great jiu-jitsu, and him and his brother have, a really weird style of striking. It's a boxing style, but they take a lot of punishment. It's almost like they break your will with their face. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you watch Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor. How many times did Conor just smoke him in the head? And with those punches, he's put away numerous guys with those strikes. And Nate just kept on coming and taking those shots. You could see just the energy just drain out of Conor. And I mean, punching somebody with all you got and them just keep on coming, that's demoralizing, to be honest with you. That's like, you start breaking people mentally and emotionally that way. And that's how those guys are, and they're good at that. They're good at luring people into their game.
And, we know that your management was lobbying for that title shot after you beat Hendricks, but just wondering, and just to confirm, has the UFC said anything to you or your management that if you beat Rory, you may get the next title shot, or is it still all up in the air?
Right now, it's still kind of up in the air. And I think not just me, but my management company are going to put their foot down if it doesn't happen. But I think the UFC, I had to give them the benefit of that. I expect them to do the right thing.
And just when you say put their foot down, how do you see that happening?
To be honest with you, I've never been in that situation before, or not really know of anybody that I could talk to that have been in that situation. But my management company is awesome, Paradigm Management. They do manage Conor McGregor. They do manage Chris Weidman and a bunch of other really high-level fighters, people who have been up at the top of the game. So I think they have their ways to actually maybe put some heat on and let the UFC know what we want.
Well, Stephen, your division is crazy at the moment. On top of all the potential fights that can happen in the division, Nate Diaz and McGregor, as everybody knows, were supposed to square off at welterweight at UFC 200. That fight fell apart in spectacular fashion. What did you think about what transpired between McGregor and the UFC? Do you think McGregor handled the situation the right way?
I don't have the inside scoop on what exactly happened. I did hear that, he was asking for, and this is just stuff I've seen on social media, maybe he wanted a little bit too much what the UFC was going to give him. I'm not sure.
I mean, what transpired in the media was basically, and for what we know is he wanted to reduce the media schedule because they want to do the world tour. Yeah, and he's had a lot of media obligations that he's had to do previously with TUF and with the Aldo fight and with the RDA fight. He mentioned that it really affected his training, and he was actually in Europe and he couldn't afford to do the world tour and wanted a reduced media schedule. That's what we know as media, and that's what was in the news.
Well, to be honest, just from the media that I've been doing, and I'm not even on his level yet when it comes to popularity and, doing the traveling and having to do all those crazy media tours. Just doing what I'm doing, which is low level, it does wear and tear on you, man. And sometimes it takes away from your training. And I can't imagine what he's going through, But on the other side of that, him being who he is, it's kind of required. You know, he does pretty much have an entire country behind him. He's one of the most popular guys in the UFC. So to help build the sport and build and seeing it go to that next level, he's kind of obligated to do that. You know what I mean? So it kind of goes both ways. I understand what the UFC is saying, and I know where he's coming from as well. So it's difficult, man.
I mean, I guess it's a bit of a funny question, but in a lot of ways, are you kind of happy that that fight didn't end up going down? Because if Diaz had won or McGregor had beat him, then there was a very real chance that, you know, there's two more guys in your division and they may even get the next title shot against Lawler.
Yeah, man, I really did. I wasn't really. They Everybody likes to watch Conor McGregor fight because he's just a character and you know, and very popular. But it was like, to me, one of the most, like, I don't know, ridiculous rematches. You know, why would they give him that? I mean, does it make sense? Why does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
You know, I don't know. I mean, it's not for a title, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it didn't really make sense. And a lot of people sort of looked at his performance against Nate Diaz and McGregor sort of gassing out a little bit. Looking at that fight, looking at that performance, do you think welterweight is the right place for him?
I really don't. They both weighed in, you know, at the bottom of the weight class, very close, you know. They were weighing as heavy as, I think, I wasn't there at his weight cut, but pretty much, I don't think they even had to cut weight, and they weighed what, 169 or something like that. It's just, and you got Robbie Lawler, who's a monster, probably walks around at 200, maybe over 200 pounds, and just somebody like that much bigger than you it's you know, it's crazy. I wouldn't see him. It wouldn't be smart if I was his coach for him to go up to 170. Yeah, the people probably will want to see it, but you know, you're thinking about your fighter, you're thinking about your, you know, your sparring partner, the guy you've been training for years, and that's a good way to really get somebody hurt. You know?
I mean, obviously, it looks like he's going back to featherweight for the time being, and who knows if he'll ever end up coming to lightweight. But last time we had you on the show, we did speak about it because it seemed more like he was going to come to welterweight and potentially stay at welterweight. And you sort of, we talked about the fight with you, and if the two of you fought, and you brought up the interesting things about, you know, your stance switching and things like that. Even though it looks like he's out of the division, is it still a fight that you'd be interested in? If the UFC said, hey, big money fight, you and Conor McGregor, why? Well, it wouldn't really make sense, but is it still a fight that you'd be interested in, especially considering the financial benefits?
Oh, definitely. And, you know, I think it would be. I mean, if I was, you know, when I become the welterweight champion, I would love to step in the octagon with Conor McGregor. He's a phenomenal martial artist, right? And I honor him for doing what he's doing with the sport. But like you said, it would be a big payday. It really would, and it would be a great payday for anybody who steps in the octagon with Conor McGregor. And I think you would be stupid if you thought otherwise. I think fighters, I think all the fighters would know that. You know, if somebody say, "Hey, you want to fight Conor McGregor?" Heck yeah, they'd all be jumping at it.
Well, Stephen, as we get to the end of the interview, we want to get a couple of predictions from you. And first, we have to find out, what do you think is going to happen in this fight between Robbie Lawler and Tyron Woodley? Who do you think will come out as champion in that one?
I see Robbie Lawler. You've had two great wrestlers face off against Robbie Lawler, and he just dominates, man. He's a very tough guy. He's very heavy on his feet, which makes it very difficult. And he's got heavy hips. When you saw, you know, Rory MacDonald shoot for those takedowns, and you've seen, you know, Rory MacDonald finish a lot of those. The majority of, if he's going to take you down, he's going to get you down. But if you watched it, Robbie stuffed every one of them, and just kind of broke him that way, which is why Rory MacDonald's, you know, kept it on his feet the last few rounds. I see it going that way. I think Tyron's performance against Kevin Gastelum, it was kind of disappointing, and that was his last fight, I believe. Yeah. Was that his last fight, Kevin Gastelum?
Yeah, and January of last year.
It just really wasn't impressive, and some people thought it was controversial. You know, some people thought Gastelum won it, but But yeah, man, I don't know. I think Robbie's got it.
I actually remember speaking on the show, and we actually said Gastelum won that fight as well, or it could have gone his way. So it's a crazy situation. But the most important and final prediction that we got to get from you is your one. Let's go back to Rory MacDonald. It's a big fight, lot on the line. Tell us, what's your prediction? How do you see this one going down? And how are you officially beating Rory MacDonald at UFC Fight Night 89?
Well, you know what? I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. So I know I'll be able to go hard for those 5-minute rounds. And that's what I'm preparing for. Keeping him away with my hands and feet. I know he's kind of one-dimensional when it comes to the striking. He keeps his left side forward. He loves to walk his way in, to throw his jab, and then once he sets down, he likes to throw combinations. Right after that combination, he shoots for the leg. So, I'm going to be prepared for that, staying on my toes, working angles. He may come out with a different strategy, maybe just bum rush me to the cage or try and get me to the ground quick. That's the thing about those guys, about Roy. He evolves, man. He gets better, and he comes in with different tricks. So we're gonna see what happens, man. And that's why I'm excited, just to see what what he's bringing to the table, and how I'm gonna react to that. But wherever the fight goes, I want to be prepared for it. If a knockout happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm going all 5-minute rounds, baby.
All right, guys. Well, how can you not be excited about that fight? Catch Stephen Thompson taking on Rory MacDonald at UFC Fight Night 89, June 18th, and follow Stephen on Twitter at Wonderboy MMA. Stephen, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure having you on the program.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.